Hello, hello. I am your host, TaSh, and this is Cheat Codes with Women in Games International. Today, we are here to talk about actionable allyship. Now, ally is a word that we hear thrown around so much on social media, but way more than we actually see in action. It feels like the right thing to say and do, but perhaps some people, they just don't know what it means. So let's take a journey through actionable allyship. What does it mean? How can we get to the point where we truly know what it means to be an ally? So with me today, I have Alexander Fernandez. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, TaSh. I'm Alexander Fernandez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Streamline Media Group. I've been making video games for 21 years around the world, from Europe to the US, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. Basically grew up in the States, but had to make my career overseas in order to basically break back into making it in the United States. So I know very well about allyship and what it takes to actually make it in this mean world.
So you have a very unique experience to grow up here, but then to take your expertise and your passion and your drive somewhere else and then to kind of see where you fit there. Was that difficult at all?
You know, the thing is like this, I think one of the things that people don't seem to realize is that in America, we like to have a lot of isms and we like to classify and categorize a lot of things. Like, you know, I'm Hispanic American. What I realized when I went to Europe, I found the power of the blue passport when I just became American in the eyes of Europeans. And that was the most powerful thing I'd ever seen before. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not Hispanic, I'm just American. And at that moment in time is when I realized just how much we like to sort and categorize things over here. And that basically allowed me to realize how you have to break free and just how much I had to go to an extreme end, leaving everything I knew in order to go literally find my future, create my fortune, and basically build a life for myself.
That's a very unique perspective, because I remember that feeling of going somewhere else. And I travel to different Caribbean islands often. That's where my friends are. And to go there, and I was talking about someone, I said, these tourists here, and they said, what does your passport say? So, wait a minute. Am I a tourist? Yeah. I think I am. It's a different kind of experience when we take off that additional label that we have here.
It does. I mean, I think what is for me, what I found is that it was liberating, because that moment in time, basically all of the conferred benefits and, let's say, opportunities of that passport became accessible immediately. And then at that moment in time, I was able to leverage it in order to create a business with 4 of my friends and turn it into effectively my life, my entire adult life, making video games and traveling around the world, working on great projects, working with great people, and basically seeing how the social economic impact of the games industry is a dream that can be implemented in any country and can lift people out of poverty and give them a future.
That's heavy.
I know it is, right? That's why people don't invite me anywhere, because of this. It's like, let's be fun. I'm like, well, let's be real. And let's talk about it's fun and real, you know, yes. But here it is.
Yeah, you have a point there, right? Yeah. So how would you describe what it means to be an ally?
You know, I think being an ally basically means actually understanding that life is affecting people in multiple ways, and that there's a lot of things that happen to people that are not in their control, right? It's no more than how you're born with different hair color, basically no more where you're born in terms of a border. And once you understand that there's a lot of things in life that you can't control, it's in realizing that you can help people based upon your specific vantage point or your perspective in order to help other people who may not have the same opportunity you have. But the first thing is to realize that life is not fair. And once you accept that and you realize that it's not these pithy statements of work hard and you might make it, but you realize that basically sometimes people need a hand up, that's what you're willing to do.
I heard someone say that ally should be taken as a verb and not a noun. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. It's an action. It is something you choose to do. It's actually, I would say it's a conscious verb. You do it. Like, I am thinking, I am talking, I am walking. I'm an ally. I think it's exactly what it is.
I like that. So part of being an ally is understanding that you have privilege.
Yeah.
But people take privilege as a really dirty word. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's the truth. I mean, I come from a Hispanic background where if you were to line up all of my family, you would see us from albino white to black. We have every spectrum of color in my family. And I saw exactly what it is. I benefited from colorism. I mean, my sister's mulata, looks nothing like me. If you put us right next to each other, you'd wonder if we were related. But I saw firsthand what that is. I know exactly what it is. And you take advantage of the opportunity that you have and you run through it. But then you have to remember that you had the opportunity. And then you got to go back for other people and help them out too.
Why are people so afraid of that conversation regarding privilege?
I think the problem is that people want to believe that there's a fairness to life. They want to believe that there's things that you can't control, that you should just accept it for the way it is, and as though that's like shirking responsibility. But I think in the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with understanding, accepting the fact that you got an advantage. That what it really comes down to is realizing that if you did have that advantage, why wouldn't you do that one thing that could help out? Now, I'm not asking you to go bleed for other people. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you need to at least acknowledge and realize that you might be able to make a difference if you just do one or two things. And those one or two things may not mean much for you, but it could change the life of an entire group of people or an individual. And that's extremely powerful.
People pretty much pigeonhole privilege, and they don't necessarily understand that it's not just the color of skin or how you present to other people, but sometimes you know that you have a privilege because when you speak a certain way, people are more apt to listen. Mm-hmm. You have a tone of voice that people tune into, or you're pretty, or you are charismatic in a different way. Those are also privileges that people can tap into to become allies.
I think this is something that's totally true. And I think one of the main things that people got to realize, there's something called economic privilege. Mm-hmm. Economic privilege is one of the most powerful things in the world. I have money, and maybe some people don't have money. That gives me access to more. I mean, the US system is great. Look at the housing system. Let's use that as sarcasm for great. Education is dictated by property tax. Live in a rich neighborhood, kids are great, school is great, we can complain about it. Live in a place where the property price is crap, well, you know what happens in the school system.
Yes.
And so that's the most simplest, easiest understanding. Everyone understands math, or at least basic math. There you go.
Yes, that's the thing. Yes. And I was a substitute teacher for many years, and to be in different schools and different systems and to see that live in action, and to be at schools where I remember a teacher asked me, "Do you go to your kids' school?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I've been here for 30 years and I haven't seen a parent, and there's a problem with that." I said, "Well, what are they doing? Why? Let's talk about that," because she didn't understand that from where she was looking at it, she was imagining parents just were making the choice not to be there for their kids, as opposed to them not having the privilege of being there for and with their kids.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. So my mom, she ran migrant seasonal farm worker Head Start. So it was migrant Head Start, right? I would go there after school and I would literally sit there and be with the children of farm workers. And I can tell you that only was ran because people did donations and because the US government did some form of subsidy. And they made miracles happen for kids that literally their parents were undocumented workers. And this is what they were doing for education. So we can even just talk about people starting from zero, pre-K, and you can already see how it begins. And again, it's not to make anyone feel bad, but it's for people to understand that that simple thing, that one thing of starting 10 meters behind the starting line, that affects your entire life, unless you somehow get that shortcut or that cheat code to get 10 meters in front. And that's the extreme. So that in the beginning of my story, leaving the United States gave me the opportunity to effectively go 40 meters in front of the starting line. That's how it played out over time. But that didn't happen until 20 years later. But that's the extremity that it took.
Wow. So you have the perspective of all sides of needing an ally and being an ally.
Absolutely. And basically finding out that sometimes the best ally is yourself, which is one of the hardest things to do. And I would say one thing, out of all of this, finding the personal strength and the perseverance and the power in yourself to be the ally you need when you need it, that was the biggest secret that I got out of the entire journey.
Oh, that's hard.
It's very hard.
Yes.
It's very hard. It's basically you break yourself in half and then you find that the gooey substance inside, and then you realize that's what you're made of. And that's the hardest part.
I guess part of that would also have to be deciding that we are worthy of being allies for ourselves too.
Pretty much. And so this is the thing, right? If we start to really open this door, it comes down to self-love. And it comes down to saying, you know what, circumstances be damned. It will not define me. And that is the hardest thing right there, is to not be boxed. And that's something that you only yourself can choose. And it's the hardest thing because it basically defies reality that you can see. It's only something you can feel. And then once you break that open, no one can stop you.
Oh, I'm going to take a moment because I think I need to hear that. Wait a minute.
I'm sorry for everyone out there listening. So I'm like, well, it's getting kind of harsh now. But
no one told you to read my life today.
I'm telling you, Matt. But you know what? Let's be clear. I mean, that's life.
Yes.
That is life. That is the essence of everything. We can decorate it, but you get down to the bottom of it, that's the reality. We don't tell each other, but why? I get why. I mean, it's not a story you tell your kids at night, but I think maybe it should be because that's the reality.
It's not pretty. But it's important.
How sausage is made. It is important because that's how you succeed.
So why is allyship important and where is it important?
It's super important because in the end of the day, not everyone has the wherewithal or even knows where to start. And I think this is the key. At one moment in time in everyone's life, there's been a person who came and said, hey, you know what? You might be worth something more. You might want to rethink this. Here, let me help you with this. Hey, let me think about it from this perspective. Allyship is another way of being educated. It's another way of being mentored. And I think it's another way of expressing care. And I think allyship is basic humanity. If you can care about what it means to be human and what it means to actually interact with a person and give some form of value that's not monetary, but just based on your time, you begin to see that. That's why teachers are powerful, right? Teachers, yes. Good teachers, they open that moment for you and they say, hey, let me show you something that you never thought or you didn't see before without making you feel bad. And so this is the thing with allyship. It's the same thing. It's being able to recognize that person in that moment for who they are and where they're at and say, hey, you know what? I might be able to help you with that. And boom, make it happen for them. That then spurs the ideas, that opens the mind and expands the horizon. At that moment in time, they can jump through. And, you see a step function that takes them to the next step, maybe 2 steps forward. That's why it's powerful.
So it's essentially the ability to step back and not judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
Absolutely. It's basically realizing we all start with nothing.
Right.
It's this idea, right? There's the famous screenwriter who wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He just passed away. I'm forgetting his name. But he says, no one knows nothing. And I love that line. No one knows nothing. And I think that, that's true. Because nobody knows. Everyone says they know, but we don't know. And that's what's powerful about that. And when you accept the fact that no one really knows, well, then hell, go out there and do it and show me otherwise. And you go.
That's true. We're all students in this space, right?
Yeah, pretty much. We're going to be very philosophical here at one point in time. We'll start hitting the tabla here in a moment in time. I mean,
It's necessary. It's necessary.
I'm telling you, it's the only way to vent, man. It's the only way. I got you. Yeah.
So how can we be allies in the gaming space?
Wow. And I know this one is, I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because it's just like, well, if you look at the past 20 years of video games, you can almost wonder, why do we keep talking about this? And it's because nothing changes. Yes. And it doesn't change because people don't want to accept the fact that, privilege exists. They don't want to accept the fact that life is hard and, that games are just about having fun and that there's not a social economic consequence to them. People, they don't want to see that. So first, let's accept the fact there's a thing called life and we're all participating in it. Let's accept the fact that we all need to put food on the table and then accept the fact that we all work and live in some form of civilization. At what level that is up to you and it's all subjective. But in this industry in which we make toys for rich kids, in which no one needs it, but we love it.
Yes.
We can then basically come to a basic function that if we can accept the fact that everything we do is a pleasure, that what we create is just for benefit of enjoyment, and yes, there's some tertiary things, then why can't we accept the fact that the people that are different from us could use a benefit too? And if we can look at that and say, hey, you know what? You don't look like me. Chances are your life was probably more difficult or maybe more easy. I don't know, but I can at least accept that it wasn't mine. Then we can start having the conversation of what can we do to make it better for you and for me and for everyone else that's here. And for the rest of them that look nothing like us, don't speak any language that we even understand, but they're also here because they have the same belief and the same care that I have when I play games because they're human. So if we can accept all of those things, then why can't we be allies?
Do you remember the first time you saw yourself represented in a game?
I mean, I'm still waiting.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm still waiting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was always happy when someone spoke some Spanglish. I'm like, oh, look, it's Chavez, I'm like,
Right.
I'm glad it's like either I'm cleaning or I'm in the military or I'm an undocumented worker or I'm basically, a drug lord.
Right.
But after that, we might make it in this world. I'm waiting, but, I'll be honest with you. It's, I was just more happy when I started to see people of color in games, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like, at least there's people that a kid somewhere can play and say, hey, that can be me. And then that triggers the idea of like, oh, I wonder how it's made. Then that triggers them to go into computers, or then it triggers them to basically be curious. And then now they're earning six figures somewhere, hopefully 5 to 7 years later, because they kept on with it.
I still remember the first time where I love RPGs. So I remember the first time that I was able to make a character that actually looked like me, that I wasn't like, well, I'll just make her a cat, or, I didn't have to settle for something else.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a level of empathy also in the gaming industry to say, okay, well, what do people look like?
Yeah.
They're not all this guy.
No. And it's funny that you say that, because actually my daughter, she's 7. She was playing in Animal Crossing, and she makes her mom and her dad. She made me, she made her brother, and she plays between them all because she's got like a little racket going on in there. And she's like, look, it's us. And I looked at it and I'm like, it's so amazing to see how she's interpreting how we look within the game itself.
Right.
And how liberating it is for her. And even when she builds stuff, and I'm like, that's exactly the point. You're seeing it in a different way than I see it as someone who basically makes these products, right? She's seeing it as a gamer. And I guess maybe that's the thing right there, is that she's 7. So for her, nothing's been written. For me, I'm some old man who's just like, okay, well, curmudgeon, here we go. But it was beautiful to see that, because, you see the imagination go, wow. And
yes.
I'm like, spark, let me grab it. So, yeah.
It's empowering too. And it's not necessarily something where, a light bulb comes on and goes, you are empowered, but it plants the seed in the soul.
It does. Well, it's that idea where they can sit there and say, I've done this. So watching her, she comes up to me now and she told me the other day, she's talking to myself and my mother. And my mom's like, oh, one day maybe you can work at Streamline. And my mom's like, oh, one day maybe you'll be the CEO. And she goes, I don't want to be the CEO. I'm like, really? Why not? She goes, I want to make the characters. I want to make the designs. And I was like, wow, that's very wise. Probably keep you in a more happy space. It's like there. Right. You'd be more creative, explore that. And I love that, because through gaming, she sees what she can become and what she wants to do. Yes. Which I didn't have to tell her. She just automatically said, hey, I can do that, because of the tools that are inside of Minecraft and inside Animal Crossing, where she could design and create. And that's where I'm like, wow, what an incredible world right there.
Yes. It was kind of insane to me that at one point, especially, the gaming world was so restrictive when it's something that's purely based out of imagination. A dragon is coming at me. I can jump from space and punch the ground, but I can't be the skin tone that I want. I can't wear what I want. I can't talk. I can't do those things, but I can jump from space. Are you kidding me?
Well, it's that idea of you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So if we, and again, I'm just going to look at it from this perspective that I think that in the end of the day, when there are more people that are representative of the way the world is, not the way people think it should be, then you will begin to realize that we will make these changes inherently just because the fact that the people creating the products don't see a difference. They're like, there's no difference between the world I'm from to the world I create. But that requires more representation within the industry itself. I mean, that's the reality. How would I know? It's like, if you think about it this way, if I only made games in Latin America, and that's all I ever did, there'd be a specific type of person within it, because that's what I understand. And that point, it may end up being just a social class, not even about indigenous people. Because let's be clear, it's not just a Western thing, it's a human thing to only do what you know. So now what we're saying is you need to know more. You need to know the world. That'll make a good product.
It definitely accepting what we don't know, because it's hard for me to sit back and understand that someone is lacking the experience outside of their world. So it's not necessarily as if they're evil or cruel. They're inexperienced. That's a hard thing because sometimes their inexperience hurts people.
Absolutely. Have you ever known anyone that's only eaten processed food? And then one day they try something organic and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this could taste this way.
Yes.
That's what we're talking. It's the same experience. It's like the only thing I ever knew was eating McDonald's. And then one day you give me a fresh tomato from the Sun Belt of Italy and say, try this. It'll be insane. It'll be like there are sensations and flavors I've never had before that will hit you, which will stimulate the mind, and you will be like neuron explosion, right?
Yes.
That's what travel does. That's what seeing other cultures does. That's what eating different foods do and what languages do. But again, if you've never seen it, how would you know? So this is, again, so going to the allyship, it's kind of one of those things, because you don't know, and you see something that is not like you, that's the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Let's have a conversation. Let me get to know something too.
Would that be the first part? Would listening be step one of allyship?
I think step 0 is accepting the fact the world is different.
Yes.
And step 1 is I'm ready to listen.
Okay.
I'm ready to listen, right? I want to listen. I don't want to just hear. I want to understand. So I guess it's listening to understand. Mm-hmm. That's step 1, right? So that then stems curiosity, because I kind of got to be curious, or what am I doing? But that open-minded curiosity, not that sideshow carnival curiosity where it's like, that's just creepy. It's like, go home and read a book then at that point in time.
Yes.
Yeah, don't be creepy. I mean, that's it. Don't be creepy.
I feel like I run into a lot of people who claim to be allies, but their stance is, I need you to teach me everything. You teach me. I'm ready to learn. And that feels also, that's heavy. I don't want it.
Abusive.
I don't want it on me.
I mean, listen, you know what it sounds like? It's like, yes, come and slum it with me.
Right.
We don't need that. I mean, no, it's like, it's straight up. It's like, I need you to come down and live in my life just so you can have thrills and chills. The reality is that come here because you care, come here because you see a mutual exchange of value, or don't come at all. If we're going to be real about that. I mean, because I think in the end of the day, one of the things people seem to not understand is that allyship is not about the carnival. It's not about the freak show. It's not about the education. It's not about the guilt. It's not about you thinking you're going to somehow save me from myself. That's not what this is about. It's about just being human and giving a damn. Let's start there.
Have a heart.
Home. And blown right there, it's like, yeah, have a heart, have empathy. So you know what? Let's get in here. Step 0, understanding the world is different. Step 1, have empathy. Step 2, listen to understand. Step 3, be willing to help someone to go up. Be wanting to help bring someone up if they want to. Not out of charity, not because you think, oh, poor person or blah, blah. It's not out of that. It's sincerity. Be sincere.
I think in that sincerity, we get the tools to understand that not everyone communicates in the same way. It's like for instance, we're talking about gratitude. Yeah. And for you, gratitude is always the color pink.
Yeah.
That's the way it looks. That's the way it feels. But someone comes up and their gratitude is purple. Yeah. You don't recognize it. You don't. And you assume that they're ungrateful because their gratitude does not match the color that you have constantly expected. So you have to step back and say, well, what does that look like coming from them? Maybe it's different.
It's interesting you mentioned it that way, because everybody perceives or understands an emotion in a different way. There was this book that I read a long time ago before I got married. My wife comes up to me. She's like, we should read this 5 love language book. Yes. My fiance at the time. And I remember being like, okay, what is this? I'm like, what is this thing? Opened it up and I read it. I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing, because they're to the point. Everyone experiences love differently, which then comes down to everyone experiences emotions differently. It's acknowledging that it can be different, that the flavor is different, the smell is different, because everyone is different, which means that level of, let me put myself a little bit further out on the risk curve to understand you is absolutely imperative. If I can't do that, then I'm probably going to miss out on some of the greatest emotions I'll ever have. It's probably why most people are alone.
That part.
I know, it's a little, yes. Read the book, but I get that for everyone out there, it's really good.
It is true, and not just romantically, but also for friendships, other things like that. People don't necessarily try to connect in a meaningful way.
Well, and so this is the thing. It's like, I bring this up in a way where it's like, yeah, it's a bit cheeky, but let's be honest about it. In the end of the day, everyone experiences humanity differently, but it's that risk curve, that how far out from my comfort zone can I go until I'm totally lost or like absolutely freaking out. The further out, the better the learning, the further out I can go again, right? I'm gonna be like, well, here we go. It's kind of a little bit like, slowly kind of, how far does this ledge go until I fall off? Like on the old 8-bit Nintendo. How far can Mario go until, oh, he fell off the cliff. Damn it. Let me try it again. It's kind of what it's like.
I killed a lot of Marios.
Oh, I do it all the time. I'm playing the one on Switch right now, man. The Odyssey. Jeez, man, that's just awesome.
Yes.
Having a hell of a good time. I'm like, this is great.
If you want someone to walk away from listening to this podcast with one thing, what would it be?
That you can really make a positive change in someone's life just by caring, by getting involved and reaching out. That's what I would want them to know. I would want them to understand that. And if they were willing to go out on that risk curve and just try, they would find an amazing part of life opening up for them.
I like that. Do you have any upcoming projects or anything you would like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, basically right now we're currently in development on some new titles at Streamline, but I always tell people to go ahead and check out Bake and Switch, which is our family couch co-op game that we made and released back in 2021. I'm trying to remember. It was during COVID.
Yeah, those 2 years are all one somehow.
Yeah, it's all, I mean, somehow, yeah, many moons ago, like pre-COVID and post, right? Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that we're looking for people. We're looking for great, diverse people from all walks of life to come and join our studio as we grow around the world, Latin America, the United States, and Southeast Asia. So if you're interested and you're curious and you're someone who's looking to basically be with a group of people that don't really care where you're from or what you look like, as long as you're willing to work with us, then come on, let me know. Hit us up.
Where can I find you?
Well, I myself am on Twitter at Starbup. I also host a podcast called Video Games Real Talk, in which we basically talk about the business of video games, and we get into some pretty, I guess you could say, spicy content, because we talk the truth about the reality of being in video games. So you can see that on your iTunes and on your Spotify. And then, of course, StreamlineMediaGroup.com or StreamlineStudios.com. Come on, hang out and talk with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for taking this time to talk about allyship, because it's a tricky conversation. And I think that the only way to come at it is to really be direct and to be honest and real and also vulnerable. And I think that you did all of those things. And I am very optimistic that whoever's listening to this right now can kind of plant a seed in their heart that they can grow into something beautiful. So thank you so much.
That's cool. Thank you for having me. And, honestly, I will say one thing is that vulnerability is just being realistic about the fact that you didn't know everything when you started. You sure as hell won't know everything when you die. So just enjoy it.
Yep. And on that note, I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode of Cheat Codes. And thank you to our guest, Alexander Fernandez. I'm your host, TaSh. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter so that you can stay informed on all things WIGI. You can sign up at getwigi.com, and you can find us on all social media, Twitter and Instagram at getwigi. And thank you so much. We will see you next time.